I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Linda and Charlie Bloom to talk about their new book, Happily Ever After, and 39 Other Myths About Love. I hope you'll enjoy the interview. So the title of your book is Happily Ever After and 39 Other Myths About Love. Why are we so susceptible to believing myths, and how can those in relationships avoid the siren call of these damaging beliefs?
Well, it's pretty compelling to believe them, and we're so easily influenced by the people who are around us, who are under the same misimpression. So to examine more carefully what it is that we believe, particularly about relationship, can save us a lot of trouble and heartache. And it's hard to do because we've been thinking these things so many years, and the people around us have been reinforcing it. We've kind of brainwashed ourselves into thinking that they're so without really deeply examining. Are these really working for me? Is there some way that they're tripping me up? Is there some way that I'm limited because of these things that I'm believing? And you know, there's a lot in the press these days about mindfulness and paying attention. And I think this is really bang on in terms of using our practice, daily practice, to be more awake and aware and mindful, is to see what we're thinking. Is this really true? Does this serve me or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really like the way you phrased the question in terms of the siren call, because it is very seductive. You know, we are kind of almost seduced into wanting to embrace the myths. And I think that part of the reason for that is that they provide us with a very convenient shortcut to doing, you know, the work that involves effort, emotional risk, vulnerability that relationships require. A myth is basically a broad generalization that's generally accepted by the culture. And when we can adopt that, it spares us the need to investigate more carefully, like what really is true in this situation right now with this person in this moment under these circumstances. So it really, it's a shortcut, but you know, as the book makes clear, I think, there's some real consequences to avoiding the true confrontation with the more important question of what is true in my experience right now? What is true? Is that belief that I have adopted, does that apply here? Is it true? Is it real? And that's where, you know, the inquiry begins. And that's really a big part of what the book is about. It has to do with what does that inquiry look like? What does it mean? What does it involve? What are the benefits to doing it?
So we've all heard of speed dating, and I'd like to do a version of that with you. So how about we speed bust some myths? I'll share the myth, you describe it, and offer advice for couples to avoid falling into the trap. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Myth number 1, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, well, I think we've all heard this one a number of times, starting at a very early age, actually. I was probably about 2 years old when I first heard that one, and I've heard it quite a few times since then. And I don't think it needs a lot of explanation. I mean, I think that most of us know what that means. What's implied in that myth is the notion that once I find the partner of my dreams, the prince or the princess, whoever that might be, then it's going to be more or less smooth sailing after that. That we've kind of done the most important thing. We've established this relationship, and you know, now it's just a matter of enjoying the fruits of it. There are some pretty significant challenges in taking that belief on, and that are kind of inevitable in the process of doing that. It really sets us up for a lot of disappointment, because with the expectation that we've kind of put the hardest part of the work behind us because we found the right person, then when difficulties, as they inevitably do, come up, then we begin to question, you know, what's the problem here? What's wrong? Have I got the wrong person? Is there something wrong with me? Are we not meant to be together? But this is inevitable, that we are going to have bumps along the way. Some of them are going to be big bumps too. So how do we deal with that? What is it that we can do to minimize the damage of taking on a myth that most of us, on some level, conscious or unconscious, have adopted?
Well, I'm the big romantic in the pair, and I did not want to give this one up, and I held on to it tight, and Cinderella was my favorite story as a kid, and I wanted the knight in shining armor to come and rescue me. And I didn't want to face the truth that relationships are up and down, and the well-being can be very high, and it can drop down low, and it can stay low for a while, because we're learning some of our biggest life lessons in this relationship. And it challenged me to step up to a higher level of responsibility and really to mature, to grow out of my little princess wanting to be rescued and really stand toe to toe with him, to negotiate about issues, and to learn how to draw boundaries, and to be willing to stand in the fire of some uncomfortable feelings of disappointment, anger, resentment. And
all those feelings that princesses are not supposed to have.
Oh man, it was a difficult time giving this one up, because I loved those happily ever after stories. And one of the things that I came to understand is there was a big part of me that really did want to stand on my own 2 feet and didn't want to be a damsel in distress that would be rescued, that I wanted to be hero, not rescued. But it was touch and go there for a while till I would give it up. Now when we teach our classes, we teach relationship classes, one of the things that I always try to convey to the students in the class is, instead of looking for your partner of your dreams, become the partner of your dreams, because it takes the power back to ourselves, that we have so much potential and capacity to affect the well-being of the relationship if we can get out of the myth that somebody else is supposed to bring it to us on a platter.
All right. Myth number 18. If you really loved me, I wouldn't need to ask.
Oh boy. I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of this myth. This hasn't been a major one for me, but I've been on the receiving end of it when Linda brought that to me. And we have had the experience of getting, in the past, into a lot of difficulties because of her expectation that, when you love somebody, they know what you're feeling, they know what you're needing, they know what you're wanting, and they're going to provide it. And if they don't, then the only conclusion to make is that, I guess, you don't really love me. So being on the receiving end of it, I would often feel judged and accused, and feel like now I've got to come up with some evidence that, no, you're wrong, I really do love you. And so we had quite a few go-rounds with that one. And, in doing the work we've done with other couples, we found that this is a very popular myth that a lot of people do have. I mean, it is easy to absorb that notion that when somebody really loves you, they can almost read your mind. And not only can they know what it is that you're needing, but they will provide it. So I'm happy to say that we have been able to move through that. You want to say a little bit about
Hallelujah.
what the work was that you were able to do?
It was a lot of suffering while I was waiting for him to guess, and while I was just leaving little subtle hints, but he wouldn't pick up on them.
I'm kind of slow about some things.
And it was a journey to get to the point where I could be bold and direct and courageous and risk asking for what I really wanted. And I'll admit that I had a lot of expectations, some of which may have been a bit awesome, a little out of proportion. And I came to understand, and this is the bust part, I came to understand that I was afraid to get vulnerable and ask for what I wanted for fear of getting rejected. And so I would try to be patient and hope that he would figure it out and love me in the way I wanted to. I like a lot of touch. I like a lot of hugs. I like a lot of words of affirmation and acts of service. I really thrive on having a lot of behavioral and verbal assurances. And he was just operating under no news is good news, if she's not complaining, I guess everything's fine, and he wasn't paying attention, and I was really sort of shriveling on the vine. When I finally was able to see that this myth was causing me tremendous suffering and was causing tension between the two of us, I realized that I had to rise up to a higher level of being assertive and get my courage together and realize that I wouldn't die if he said no. And more often than not, he said yes and reinforced, thanking me, letting me know, I appreciate you telling me the ways in which you need to be reassured if you have doubt. I appreciate your telling me how you want to be loved specifically, because I do love you and I don't want you to live in doubt and fear that I don't. So it's been a powerful learning experience. It was a real turnaround in our relationship when things got more honest and open. He doesn't need as much reassurance as I do. Mm-hmm. But when I started to get it, I started to thrive, and then I didn't have that fear anymore. He doesn't love me, or he doesn't love me very much, or he doesn't love me as much as I love him. Those things that plagued me for a while. Mm-hmm.
And myth 31, people don't change.
I had somebody say that to me yesterday. It's a prevalent view. I find it so sad when I hear it that people don't have vision to see the awesome possibilities that are available to each individual and to each couple. And we do not have to be determined by our past. We do not have to be determined by a poor track record if we've had difficulty in relationship. We don't have to be clones of our parents if they had rough relationships. Maybe we didn't get off to a good start. But that doesn't mean that we can't change. We can use the things from prior adult relationships that didn't work and from our family of origin didn't work to be our most powerful lessons about what will be skillful choices going forward. And I feel like there's so much disillusionment and despair and bitterness, when people are attached to that particular myth. And they'll get to be right about that. Mm-hmm. That will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Because they won't be thinking in terms of possibilities. They won't be thinking in terms of personal growth and development. They'll be thinking in terms of limitation, that you have to settle for less than is really available in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like so many other myths, this is attractive because if I really adopt this and I believe it, then for one thing, I don't have to be responsible for attempting to become a better person. And what I mean by that is that I don't necessarily have to change my personality. Certain things in me are not going to change. I have certain predispositions, we all do, that are more or less fixed. But certainly our way of being, our behaviors, the way in which we interact is very subject to change if we're clear about an intention to become or to develop certain aspects of ourselves more fully, or to stop reinforcing tendencies that are not skillful. So, yeah, like all the myths, there's a kernel of truth in that, mm-hmm. that there are certain things that we're not going to change about mm-hmm. who we are. Our fundamental personality, it's not likely to radically change, but there are things that we can do, and one of them is to stop focusing so much on what's wrong with the other person and begin to look more carefully at how is it that I'm being that is activating certain responses in them, and what can I do that can predispose them to becoming more conciliatory, more understanding. If I'm with somebody who seems to be judgmental and I just say, well, that person is judgmental or they're defensive and there's nothing I can do about it because people don't change. Well, in our first book, one of the things that we say is, one of the one-liners is, if your partner is being defensive, then maybe you're giving them some reason to feel the need to be defensive. So if I can look at, well, what's my part in this thing? What is it that I may be doing that could be influencing them to be acting in ways that are making me feel like I want them to be different? And are there ways in which I could respond to them that would motivate them to become more open, more accepting, more understanding, whatever it is that I'm looking to be. But to look more at myself and what I can do to make things better than to look at what they're doing that are making things wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.